Meet top sportscasters Bruce Beck and Ian Eagle next on a special edition of Carpe Diem. Hello, I'm Mark Rosenwig, Assistant Professor of Television and Digital Media at Montclair State University. Our guests on this edition of Carpe Diem are sportscasters Bruce Beck and Ian Eagle. They're here at MSU to be honored with our Alan B. Dumont Broadcaster of the Year Award. Beck is a sportscaster for New York's WNBC TV, who has covered major events around the world, including the last 5 Olympic Games. Beck has also worked for NBA TV, MSG Network, hosted shows on Giants and Rutgers football. He's done it all. Ian Eagle joined CBS Sports in 1998, play-by-play announcer for NFL football and the NCAA Men's Basketball Championship. He also is play-by-play announcer for NFL Thursday Night Football on Dial Global Radio and for the Brooklyn Nets of the National Basketball Association on the S Network. Most importantly, for over a decade, Beck and Eagle have run the Bruce Beck and Ian Eagle Sportscasters Camp each summer at the Yogi Berra Museum and Learning Center on the MSU campus. They've been instrumental in teaching many students who've gone on to broadcasting careers. Welcome to both of you and congratulations on the award.
Mark, thank you very much.
Let's start at the beginning. How did you guys get started? At what age, Ian, did you know you wanted to be on the sports beat?
As scary as it may sound, I knew by the age of 8 that this is what I wanted to do, and I was focused on it from that day on. I told my dad at an early age that this is what I eventually saw myself doing, and fortunately I had parents that looked outside the box and didn't necessarily think that I had to do something conventional, and encouraged me and told me that if this is what I wanted to one day do in my life, that I would accomplish it.
And you told our students earlier you had to overcome a speech impediment to do this.
I did. I had a lazy S, or a lisp, as it's called in the trade, and I didn't believe my father when he told me that, and I was quite irate when he shared the information with me. But he was right, and it took me about a month. I worked through it. I'm okay. I mentally came through fine, 100%, and every now and again, the lazy S might work its way into my life, but never on the air.
Bruce, how did it start for you?
Pretty much the same way in terms of being a 6, 7, or 8-year-old. I don't remember exactly the age, but I was listening to the Knicks on radio. I was imitating Marty Glickman and Howard Cosell and Marv Albert. I went to camp on the at Summers, and I would be on the bunk, and I'd be imitating these guys, and everybody would be saying, this is crazy. This guy wants to be an announcer. I knew that if I couldn't make it in the NBA, and I was decent, you know, but I wasn't tall enough and wasn't quick enough. So a vicarious thrill, I would say, is being a broadcaster of games and being on the local news. But I always wanted to do it, and I'm thrilled that I am doing it. When I run into people in the street, they say, Beck, you always wanted to be a broadcaster. You're doing it. I say, yeah, and I'm still loving it.
But did that bunk routine make you popular or unpopular?
No, I think it was okay. I think I was fairly popular in that regard. I was often asked to do these auditions for everyone, or to go off into a rendition of one of my Knicks Bullets games from the glory years, and I always embraced it because I was ready to perform.
Mark, it was always fun doing play-by-play when you were actually participating in a pickup game. That can often be annoying for the other participants. Eagle down the lane, Eagle to the hoop, Eagle lays it in. The other guy's guarding me like, please be quiet, just play. So you figure out where you fit in to the overall scheme.
I actually kept stats of baseball games in the driveway and in the backyard and against the house, and I had a league that I invented, and I would keep the stats, actual stats of the Giants, the Dodgers, the Cardinals, the Mets, the Yankees, and that's the way I announced my own game in that regard, not with people going down the lane, but in the backyard. If you came through, oh, that's the crazy kid down the block who thinks he's going to be a broadcaster.
Yeah, and amazingly, I'd never heard that story from Bruce. I basically did the same thing. I had baseball cards set up in my room. I had a full season, 162 games with different teams that had been set up, evenly matched, at least as far as I was concerned, and would announce those games in my room. Eventually, I moved that announcing into the shower, very good acoustics, and I found that I did some of my best work in the shower.
My mother threw away my baseball cards.
Oh.
I've never forgiven her.
That's just-
Thousands.
that's
Mickey
wrong.
Mantle was in that
Worth a
group.
lot of money today.
Worth a lot of money.
But that meticulous preparation, that seriousness about it, even though you were having fun with it in some ways, that really set you up for what you're doing now, right? Because you guys prepare intensely for your shows.
Yeah, and I think if you ask broadcasters, they would give you a number of different ways how they go about their preparation. It is a process. Bruce's way may be different than my way. The ultimate goal is to get to that event as prepared as you possibly could be and be entertaining on the air, be informative on the air, and be obviously factually correct, be accurate. So for me, I would not be able to sleep at night if I was not ready for whatever sporting event I was calling. In a bizarre way, I think you might be right, Mark. I do believe that some of that mindset and that philosophy as a kid probably did transfer over to my adult years, and I prepare for these games as intensely as I did the first day I got my first assignment doing NBA, NFL, college basketball, what have you. Bruce and I, the one thing about it as well is, big key is being versatile. Whatever the assignment is, you say yes. You don't question the assignment. If someone calls with an opportunity, you say yes.
In terms of preparation, I think I want to outwork the guy. Coaches want to outthink a guy or out-prepare a guy. We try to do the same thing. We want to just be prepared, ready to go. I use manila folders and Sharpies, and I've got a huge collection of folders all over my room, all over the house. I've got them in storage areas.
How does your wife feel about that?
She doesn't like it. We've been fighting about this for years.
It's hoarding.
That's amazing.
Bruce is a hoarder. Truly, this could be a reality show. Bruce has maintained preparation material from New York Ranger games in 1982. There you go.
I've got it.
You've got Barry Beck.
I got a feature
No
on
relation.
Barry Beck.
You've got Barry Beck
I've got
information.
notes from games I did in the 80s. I've got every ultimate fighting I did in the early days of that venture that now has gone mainstream and is a billion-dollar empire. It's all about preparation. I always tell the kids that. How can you be ready to go so it becomes an open book test and so that you're comfortable? That's one thing you don't have to worry about.
I have a 5-year rule. After 5 years, the information's gone.
No way with me.
5 years,
I keep this stuff forever.
cart it to the garage, I put it in the dumpster, and it's done. 5 years. Bruce is literally on 30 years of information.
Well, that's going to be a Hall of Fame someday.
No doubt
don't you
about
think? How did the two of you meet? How did you decide you were going to establish this camp at Montclair State for the last 11 years, which has done so much for so many students, and many of your alums are now our students and our alums and so on. How did it get started, and how did you meet? How did you meet?
Yeah, it was almost like a blind date. It was an act of fate, really, not to be over dramatic, but I think Bruce and I complement each other so well in this endeavor. Bruce is really got the personality of a camp counselor.
I'm the rah-rah guy.
He is. I'm more professorial and
The humorist.
a little bit of a humorist, satirist, if you will.
He's the jokester.
Jokester. The reality is, I would not do the camp without Bruce.
I wouldn't do the camp without Ian.
And the feeling is mutual. We've realized through the years that it's the perfect blend. We came together based on a mutual friend, Dave Cerroti, who was teaching a class at the time at Seton Hall University.
He's as crazy as we are.
I think he's crazier.
Yeah.
And I think he had the idea that the two of us could probably make something like this work. There was nothing like it in America since we started 11 years ago. There have been some imposters, and we encourage others to go out and try. We just hope that they're doing it the right way, because ultimately you've got to teach this the right way to get the results that you hope for, which is kids learning about this from the bottom up, learning the basics, and having an understanding of how much work goes into it, how much preparation, and how much dedication. This isn't something that you go half-hearted into. If you're passionate about this, you have to be all in.
I remember the first day when Ian and I looked out at the audience, which was our campers per se, and we said, is anyone nervous in the room? And everyone raised their hand, including us, because we didn't know how it would evolve. But we knew that we were committed. We knew we were passionate. We knew we wanted to teach. We knew we could bring in speakers from the New York area, good announcers that had stories to tell. And it just unfolded in a beautiful way where kids enjoyed it. We enjoyed teaching. And the rest, as I say, is history.
Now, you guys obviously have a lot of fun with this, but you work hard as well. Let's talk about some of the challenges so everybody out there knows it. For example,
You can't be making any commitments for holidays, for evenings, for weekends. You miss birthdays, bar mitzvahs, weddings. Your life is turned upside down. But we both are fortunate that we've been married for a while. Me, 32 years.
To separate women, we should mention, Mark.
Ian over 20?
19. I'm 19 years.
So that's 51 combined. That's amazing. We're celebrating our gold anniversary. The bottom line is you need somebody who can understand, because it's tough. It takes a lot of commitment. You're on the road. He's in the air every time I call him. He should learn how to be able to tweet or to email from planes, because he's always on a plane. But it is something that you have to realize, that this business is not just all the beauty of being on television and celebrating the joy of that. This is tough work.
how do you deal with all of that travel, particularly in the fall, winter season? It's constant. How do you pace yourself? How do you cope with it?
Mark, I find a happy place, truly. I travel about 155 days a year for business and business only, and then extra days for family vacations, what have you. And I find that when I go from airport to airport, I just try not to allow things to bother me, because ultimately, when I get on the air, nobody cares. Nobody cares if I was sleeping in a hotel the night before with thin walls and the person next to me had sleep apnea and they tend to snore a lot. That's irrelevant to their world. The viewer just wants to know about the game. So I've been able to separate my assignment and everything that happens on the periphery. It's made me better at my job. It's made me a better person, probably made me a more understanding person. And my tolerance level is incredibly high. These are good problems, that people want to hire me, that people want to travel me around to call games. I remind myself of that every single time I get on an airplane.
How many people enjoy doing what they're doing today? If we were getting up at 9 and being done at 5 every day, I do not think we would be happy. We are happier with a more frantic, hectic lifestyle, because it involves sports, which is our love from our youth on, and we feel blessed to be doing what we're doing. Yep. Because, hey, you know, there's somebody out there who will do it for probably less and who's probably younger.
You're right.
So every day we count our lucky stars in that regard.
I think ultimately, too, and something that Bruce and I share, was a thirst for information. Bruce, as a young kid, same for me, studying Baseball Digest, studying the Baseball Encyclopedia, trivia. When I first met Bruce, that's what I remembered him for. If you ever called his machine, back then when we actually had answering machines, Bruce would have a daily trivia question.
Hi, I'm Bruce. Here's your daily sports quiz.
Literally every day.
And you couldn't get through if you didn't
If you didn't know, he wouldn't return your call.
No awards given unless you came up with the right answer.
And I believe that to some degree that's the backbone of what we do, retaining information and then that love of sharing information. And there's so much out there now. And Bruce gets to do it on a nightly basis on the local news. I get to do it during game broadcasts. And while it's a little bit different, our roles, ultimately, our objective is the same, to try to shed a little light on whatever event we're covering, whatever athlete we may be covering, and whatever sporting event is next up in line that the people want more information, that thirst, that quench for knowledge.
How has sports shaped my life? The Battle of Hastings is Walt Frazier Raynitzky, 1066. Battle of Charlemagne is Mickey Mantle Jim Otto, 700. Everything evolves around sports and numbers, and that's how I remember the Magna Carta and everything else.
Now that we have our history lesson, though, you talked about this tremendous volume of information that we have to sift through every day. When I did a sports media survey with a bunch of professionals a few years ago, their number one concern was the pressure to be first, particularly on the internet and with Facebook and Twitter, versus making sure it's right. How do you deal with that?
You got to be right. You got to be accurate. Yeah. I mean, it's great to be first, but you've got to be accurate, especially if you're doing local news. And that means sometimes getting beat by somebody else or making sure that you don't make the first error. I think it's probably worse to make the first error than it's better to be the first to report it. So with Twitter and Facebook, and I'm involved in all the social media because it's a part of the whole landscape today, I really love to use it. It's important. It reaches a lot of different people. It's a great way to connect, but you've got to be accurate. You've got to be resourceful. You have to be responsible and trustworthy?
Yeah, accountable, that's the other word as well. Bruce lives in a little bit of a different world than I do. Bruce is dealing with breaking news on a daily basis. He's dealing with trying to be first if he can. If he can break a story locally, that can help him, that can help his ratings, that can help his newscast. For me, accuracy becomes a big key in calling a game. Ultimately, the news around that game is very important, but it's not my job, it's not my role to be out there first, to break news, to try to shock the sports world with a bit of information that I have. In fact, if anything, it's quite the opposite. I have to have a form of discretion based on meetings that I have with players and coaches that a lot of the information I'll embargo until that game, until that broadcast. CBS sends me on the road to do a particular NFL game. We meet with the coach on Friday. If it's not considered breaking news, if it's something that is germane to the game that I'm covering, I'm going to hold that information until Sunday when I'm on the air at 1 o'clock, and I might use it in my open, I might use it when the offense takes the field. So I have to pick and choose my spots a little bit more. And again, our ultimate goal is the same, but how we get there is a little bit different throughout the week.
I still try to be first. I mean, I grabbed Pete Sampras at a trash compactor once. That was pretty good. And I waited for Pedro Martinez outside of a small airport in Westchester County, hiding behind a car, behind a fence. And whatever it takes to get it and do it well is okay. But Ian and I will tell you that there have been many times that, as he said, embargoed. We haven't given information out because of the relationship we've built with somebody. And going forward, you're not going to have the trust of that guy ever again if you spill the beans and you really ruin somebody's confidence.
Well, let me ask you about a scenario that occurred, because I did a panel at the Barra Museum recently, and Rich Cimini from ESPN New York was on, that covers the Jets. And he said during last summer at the Jets camp, they started running the Wildcat with Tim Tebow, and they came on and they announced to all the reporters there, we're going to do this right now, and you can't report on this. And the coaches were trying to stand in front of them to block their view and all this stuff. That puts a reporter in an awkward position. How does somebody deal with that?
Yeah, it sure does. I mean, you're serving a number of masters. In Rich's case, he has to serve his audience, which is ESPN New York readers, and his employer. The problem is, if he does go with this information, there's a chance that the Jets will then lock him out in terms of further information and doing his job correctly. If he's aced out by the head coach, and Bruce has seen this, where there are reporters whose credibility and reputation is damaged based on the fact that they went with a story that may not have been completely fleshed out, and it affects their ability or inability to do their job. So you have to be able to balance that out in your own head. What's more important? What's your priority in the moment? You'd like to think that the team would not put them in that situation. If they don't want them out there, then ban them from that portion of practice. Tell them they have to go back to the media center and explain why later.
I have a key word. It's called appeal. I often appeal decisions that are rendered by a team. And I will go to them and say, hey, this is better for you. It's better for me. It's better for our audience. Why don't we try it a different way? And if that doesn't work, then you have a problem. But there's one rule of thumb I have. It's great to do the sneaky stuff that I do, which is waiting behind a wall or hiding behind a car. But if you ask for permission to do something and they say no, then you can't go do it. Right. So don't ask is the better rule of thumb. Don't ask and then try to get them and then later say, oh, I didn't know. I wasn't sure that was the rule. It's better to go that way than if you ask if you can speak to somebody and then they say no and then you try to get them later on your own. That doesn't work.
What about each of you have multiple jobs, more so, Ian right now. Ian, excuse me.
That's all right.
I'm confusing you with the director, who is Ian. Right?
My first year when I got the CBS job, the first game that I was assigned was to go do a rehearsal game with Mark May. Mark May was my analyst, 6'5" offensive lineman, big guy. I'm not going to go through my measurements, but it's not quite in the same area. So we're an odd couple. We show up at Dallas Cowboy Stadium at the time, and Jerry Jones is on the field. And Mark knows him, and Mark says, hey, come meet Jerry Jones. So we walk over, and he introduces me. He says, Jerry, I want you to meet Ian Eagle. And Jerry looks at me, shakes my hand, he says, Iron? I said, no, it's actually Ian. He goes, Iron? I said, no, it's Ian. He goes, Iron. I said, yeah, it's iron. I just went with it. So, Mark, don't worry.
Okay. Well, I knew when we had a director with the same spelling,
it was going to
happen.
It was going to happen.
Yeah. But working for several masters, if you will, including sometimes the team itself, how does that work? How do you navigate through that? We have people who work radio shows and then do Yankees games, I won't mention names, and so on, and maybe outspoken on the radio, but they take a different persona on television.
I think you just have to be professional. I do the Rutgers coaches shows for football and basketball. I'll do some play-by-play for their games. I'll do a bunch of other boxing matches, freelance, whatever it might be. I work for Epix doing their boxing now. I think the bottom line, again, is back to professionalism. You try to be honest and fair. If you're working for a team, I still think you're 60-40. You're working for the team. You're working for the club. But at the same time, you're not 80-20 in a shill, and you're not 50-50 because you got to give the team the benefit of the doubt. It's all about relationships and working together.
I adopted a philosophy very early on when I realized that I had multiple employers and I needed to placate. And that was that I wouldn't say anything on the air that I wasn't comfortable if they played it back with me sitting in that person's office. So in my mind, my credibility is always on the line, and I'm honest. I'll look someone in the eye, and I would never take a cheap shot or a pot shot. Anything I say on the air, I truly believe. I'm not playing a character trying to stir things up. You walk a very fine line, and we know that there are a lot of people that are very sensitive in this business, broadcasters included, by the way. I've never had an issue based on that, and the couple of times that I have been asked about something that I've said, I said to the person very directly, let's go back and watch the tape. And one time I did, and the person who was a head coach in the NBA watched the tape with me and said, you're right. What someone told me you said is not what you actually said. It's a game of telephone out there. Bruce will be the first one to tell you. A lot of people react to things that you say, not necessarily the person you said it about.
They don't even understand it.
Yeah.
It comes out a different way. I've had run-ins with Bernie Williams, Charles Oakley, Anthony Mason, guys over the years, athletes, but I've done the same thing. I've talked to them and said, hey, I asked you a tough question, but I was fair. And I think I have that reputation in New York that I'm never going to burn you. I'll ask the question that's the question of the day. You know, with Derek Jeter, I'll ask him that question if he really was overeating.
Yeah.
But I'll do it in a way which isn't going after him so disgustingly. I'll do it in a way that's fair. Hey, Derek, have you been overeating? Have you seen the picture in the Post? Rather than, man, you are getting fat. You're a slob. What do you think? You just don't do that. And if you do it well, they know that if you're tough but fair, you can ask those questions forever. And oftentimes I'll get to do the extra interview with somebody. Somebody will do me a favor on the side. Coach Tom Coughlin, Eli Manning, Derek Jeter. These guys will do it because you've built that relationship.
Years ago, Chuck Daly was the head coach of the then New Jersey Nets, Hall of Fame coach, tremendous coach, won multiple championships with the Pistons, ultimately did a great job in Orlando, and really did a great job with the Nets. And he did not have the easiest cast of characters to coach. Derek Coleman was on that team, and I had to go in and interview Chuck, and before the interview, I did tell him, I said, look, Chuck, I have to ask you a tough question regarding Derek. He had missed practice, there was insubordination. And Chuck looked at me, and I was a young broadcaster, and he said, you ask whatever you want. There's no such thing as a tough question, only tough answers. And it made perfect sense. He was 100% right. He still was in control of the interview, and I think that oftentimes is something that gets lost in translation. You can diffuse situations as an interviewee. The interviewer's role is to try to get the answers for the viewer. The interviewee's role is to handle it the best way they know how.
Forgetting about sports radio for a minute, number of sportscasters occasionally drift into opinions, not whether somebody's in shape or stuff like that. What I'm really referring to is Bob Costas' comment recently about gun control and in the aftermath of the terrible tragedy in Kansas City and so on. how would you calculate what's appropriate and what isn't in not just that situation, but other delicate situations?
The world has changed in that regard. Now, I'm not a guy that does as much opinion as my predecessor, Len Berman, did. I'm more of the guy that's in the field, digging for stories, trying to get an exclusive, trying to present as much as you can. But I will say what's on my mind. I think, again, you have to be honest to yourself and honest to the audience. And, you know, the viewer nowadays wants it. They want to hear what you think about, should it be Sanchez? Should it be Tebow? Should it be McElroy? Who's going to start and why? They want that. They're thirsty for that. That's what makes talk radio. But doing local news is a little bit different. I can do it elegantly, and I can do it without, you know, banging you over the head with it like talk radio.
Yeah, I think the lines have blurred. There's no doubt about it. There was a time where those opinions were based only in talk radio, and if you brought them onto a network broadcast, if you brought them onto a local broadcast, it would be frowned upon. It felt that it wasn't the right place. Context, to me, is the biggest issue. Bob Costas, as the example that you brought up, Mark, he is hired to provide a halftime commentary for every Sunday night game. Now, that doesn't mean that every viewer is going to agree with his commentary. This particular one that you're alluding to regarding gun control after the tragedy with Javon Belcher and his girlfriend, the mother of his child, the murder-suicide, that's a touchy subject. We know that. I think there are a lot of people that are uncomfortable with the idea that gun control would be brought up during an NFL broadcast. This is what Bob is paid to do, to make you think, to make you react. Bob is probably the most eloquent broadcaster there is today. I'm not just saying sports, might be the most eloquent broadcaster in all of broadcasting. Bob's reputation is such and his credibility is such that he's built up enough equity. Now he's got to go out and defend himself because it did ruffle some feathers, and that's a whole different issue. But the fact that there's a question as to whether or not Bob has the right to do that, he's certainly within his rights for that context. It's a halftime commentary. This is what it is. I think there are a lot of viewers that have watched it on the internet, take it a little bit out of context, completely forgetting the fact that this was a football-related item, and obviously now this story is going to have legs for quite some time.
But I've seen criticism where they've compared this to Don Imus, and they've compared it to Rush Limbaugh. They've compared it to racial type overtones. This is not racial. Yeah. This is an opinion. This is an opinion that he took in a certain way, and people didn't like it.
And I'm sure some of it has to do with the fact that it sits on YouTube, just like other comments.
Forever.
Sure it does.
And so on.
Forever.
I want to thank both of you for being here with us. We've had some laughs, we've talked seriously, and it shows the wide range that you bring as well. Thank you, and congratulations.
Pleasure to be with you.
Thanks, Mark, very much.
And thank you to all of you for being with us and for watching. If you'd like information on this or any edition of Carpe Diem, write us at carpediem@mail.montclair.edu or call us at 973-655-5850. I'm Mark Rosenwig for all of us at Montclair State University. Thanks for watching Carpe Diem.